Good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m. Friday, November 8th. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Stahelis. Are there any late items to be introduced? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. Discussion. Call the vote. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Takes us to the committee of the whole meeting items for discussion. There's a recommendation that council resolve itself into committee of the whole to hear two items. A, regarding the community wildfire resiliency plan, and B, the civic lands master plan update. Can you hear me? Moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call a vote on that to resolve into committee of the whole. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is your mic working, Councillor Schweinbenz? Is it? Yes? You have a question? Yeah.
Sorry, I did have a question. Just in terms of process and procedure, if we have additions or deletions to the plans or things that we're looking at today, do we do that during the presentation? Are we doing this afterwards? So I'm just wondering what the process and procedure is for this meeting today.
CAO Cook?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it really depends on what the discussion is. If it's an item by item issue, then I think we could, if it's a discussion to either, or a decision to either remove it or maybe expand on it, that could be made at that time. But I would say that if it becomes like there's a specific issue with a portion of the plan, then I would say that it would be either the council could either decide to keep it in the report, or you could decide to remove it. If there's any modifications, then we would have to probably take it back, and it was agreed upon by council, we'd have to take it back for our consultant to review and change.
Does that take us to our item A, the community wildfire resiliency plan? Is there someone from Blackwell to speak to this?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Great. Okay, so my name is Deborah, and I presented the plan originally to council on October 21st. So I'm here today with some prepared answers to the questions that we received on the plan, but I'm also happy to answer any questions that are brought up. So if I can just share my slide here. Could I receive permissions to share?
Sorry, Deb, you should be good now.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just launch into it. So short and sweet, the purpose of this presentation is to allow this committee to have an opportunity to answer or to ask questions on the plan, on the community wildfire resiliency plan that Blackwell was contracted to develop for Harrison Hot Springs this year. And I've received, I think it was 18 questions, which Christy Ovens forwarded to me. So I've prepared answers on those, and I've got them up on these slides, so we can just go through them one by one, if that's all right. So the first question was to summarize and highlight where the wildfire risk remains the same and where it has changed in comparison to the previous report. So the previous report being the Community Wildfire Protection Plan that BA Blackwell developed in 2017. So the answer to that is that the steep east-facing slopes above the town still rate as moderate fire behavior threat in this current report. The big change is to the fire behavior rating of the east sector lands. So in this report, they're rated as low threat, whereas they rated as a combination of low, moderate, and high in the previous report. So I'll just show pictures on the next slide here. So on the left is the previous report, and on the right is the current report. So you can see the changes there. And we, I guess, two major reasons for that change. The first one being that in 2017, we actually used a different threat assessment methodology. So it was an internal methodology that had a different accounting of consequence. In the past few years, we've moved to a methodology that's used across the province, just in an effort to have plans be more consistent one to the other. And we actually believe for this report that the low threat rating for east sector lands does more accurately represent the status on the ground. So that's my answer to that question. Are we going to do a discussion through this presentation, or should I just move on to the next question?
No, I'll stop you right there.
Okay.
Chris Weinbetz has a comment or a question.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Deb. Thank you. It's Mark here, and thank you for the presentation or for your report. It was fantastic.
Good.
So so a couple questions here. In 2017, I think you had 11 local sites that you looked at, and in this current one, you had 5. Wanted to see why there was a lower number. And methodology has changed. Is this best practices now? What have we learned over the last 6 years so that we are doing these methodologies different? And people are asking, maybe they did it 6 years ago during August and they did it in April this year. So was there a seasonality aspect to it, or can you speak to the methodologies about it?
Oh yeah, good question. Okay, so the first thing you mentioned was what we call the wildfire threat assessment plot. So that's the 11 versus 5. So our field assessment for both of these plans was conducted the same way. So we basically walk through all these areas, and we're kind of always taking notes. But when we fill out a formal form called a wildfire threat assessment, and that's where that's what we call this plot. So at each of these points, we have a form. And for this plan, the forms have changed over the years. But for this plan, we did look at the plots done in the previous plan. These plots, they have photos embedded in the form, and they also describe things like the number of understory and overstory stems per hectare, the amount of surface fuel loading, what type of understory vegetation is present. And so we actually tried to cover different areas with these plots. But yeah, I would say that most of the field assessment is qualitative, and these plots are sort of a convenient way to share information, but they're really not the basis for the whole assessment. How the fire threat, I guess, gets how it gets assessed and how it ends up on a map is through a combination of spatial components. And so I guess your second question was how have things changed? So certain things are the same. So a major input into these models are fuel type. And actually that in itself, I forgot to mention, was a change between these two plans. So there's been a shift, a sort of evolution in the understanding of how to model the fire threat of a mixed wood forest. So that's a forest that has both conifer and deciduous trees, which is a lot of these forests are in the Harrison Hot Springs Valley. And so in 2017, these mixed wood stands ended up being modeled as having higher fire behavior potential than we generally in this field believe they have now. So that's one thing, would be the fuel type input changed through kind of developments in that understanding. Other inputs are topography. That's a really important one, and that's kind of why you'll see those steeper slopes not having as much of a shift. Another big input is, well, you mentioned, is there a seasonal component? So No, there isn't in terms of when we do the field assessment. We always try, it can be hard sometimes to apply to think objectively when you're standing doing an assessment in the rain, but we there is no there should be no difference in the notes we're taking in the field, whether it's, you know, May or August. And the weather component that goes into this analysis is strictly historical. So we put in what ecological zone the area is in, as well as the historic fire incidences in the area. So that should be comparable. Does that address that question?
Yes, for sure. But just to clarify, because I've got some residents that live right across the street from the east sector,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, their theory is that over the last 6 years, it could only get worse because the fuel load is increasing. But I think what I'm hearing you say, and I'm glad to hear this, is that there's been new science and a new perspective on forest load. If it's deciduous or if it's more biodiverse, it's actually a good thing. So what you're saying is that the scientific community has changed their opinion on forest load not necessarily being a bad thing. Is that correct?
I guess I should clarify that piece a bit. So the technical change between and how we modeled these mixed wood stands would be that different mixed wood stands, the fuel type system in BC is not perfect, and we use a Canadian system, and so a mixed wood stand is actually typically modeled as an aspen stand with spruce in the understory, which does burn. So if you have a high percentage of conifer, we characterize these stands as we say, oh, okay, it's a mixed wood stand and it's got X percentage conifer. And the higher the percent conifer is, the more potential fire threat it's modeled as. So when the plan was done in 2017, we classified a lot of these stands in the east sectors having, they were mostly conifer, but they had some deciduous. So we modeled them as like 70% conifer. The shift in understanding has been that, oh, because of the way this model works, those 75% conifer stands are being modeled as having an unrealistically high fire behavior potential. So it was, I guess, a realization that we have to actually artificially type these stands as having a lower percent conifer in order for the model to produce a more realistic result, if that makes sense. So now we're typing these stands just generally across the board, and all these plans we do, these stands that wouldn't burn very intensely, but still have maybe a high percent conifer. So we're typing those as having lower percent conifer. We're saying, okay, it's mixed wood stand, it's only 30% conifer. And then we're getting the model result that we think reflects reality.
Thank you. It just confirms what I've kind of thought about these sectors. It's mixed, it's biodiverse. Doesn't look like it was replanted when it was clear cut 100 years ago.
Yeah, I
Nature's
think
kind
you're
of
right.
taking its course. It's low, it's wet. When you dig into the soils, it's moist.
Mhm.
So,
It is definitely a wet site.
it's comforting, I think, for us to see that our most immediate forest to our residential areas is low, and I'm glad to see that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon, through you to our presenter. Just keeping along that theme with the East Sector lands, because it tends to be a very wet and boggy. I'm wondering if that also is taken into consideration in the new rating, and also the fact that McCombs Road, which runs adjacent to the East Sector lands, if you felt that that provided kind of a buffer, should, you know, unfortunately, or if a fire should start in the East Sector lands, that having the road there minimizes the risk of it spreading to neighboring residents. And final question is, did you also take into consideration the installation of the Sentinel system as a factor of reducing the rating in the east sector? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so three things to address there. The first one is whether we took into account that it's a wet site. And yes, we would. The modeling is a bit too coarse for that, and it's really based on us putting in fuel type information. And the fuel type we chose, as I kind of explained, we made this choice about what kind of how to tune the rating based on that percent conifer, and the fact that it was such a wet and rich site played into the percent conifer we assigned. In addition, a lot of these stands are just pure deciduous stands, so we made sure when we were doing the spatial analysis for this to really delineate those stands, because that influences the end result as well. Although you can see here it is just low across the board, and reasons for that, I guess, would be that the other factors that go into this. So it's flat topography. It's an ecosystem that historically doesn't see a lot of fires, that kind of thing. So that was the first part that yes, we took that into account in these analyses, but then also in our recommendations. So the second one about the road, yes, absolutely. So this sort of technical analysis is only one part of the plan. A big part of it is synthesizing all the information and what we hear from staff from the fire department and that kind of thing, and then coming up with recommendations. And so the road being there definitely was a factor. So in a scenario maybe where you had homes that directly back onto east sector, maybe we'd recommend, oh, this should be a priority for Fire Smart. We think there should be some surface fuel cleanup or something. Like, that's potentially a scenario. But the fact that there is quite a gap between structures and the forest stand, for sure that played into the fact that we didn't recommend any sort of active mitigation. I guess on a very slight tangent, it's just the fact that we're really trying to communicate in the last few years with these plans that not all risk can be reduced in an area. Fuel, we have both human and natural fuels, and if you want to live in an environment with trees, there's always a chance that that a fire can burn, right? But I guess what we're trying to really emphasize is that, yeah, that residual risk will always be there, but we want to identify opportunities where there can be a meaningful reduction in risk. And that's not always the case. Sometimes the forest really, the active mitigation won't really result in a meaningful risk reduction. So that's what we're always thinking about. So the road, yes, we considered it. And the third thing, SenseNet, that didn't affect our risk rating of the east sector lands, but it was something we discussed in the plan. It's a positive, I would say.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tallon. Nothing further at this time.
Seeing no other comments, please continue with your question from our fire chief, Curtis.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi,
Okay,
yes, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'll go back.
Yeah, hey, it's Harrison Chief Curtis Genest here. Just reviewing some of the report and the details of the east sector being a low risk. Were any of the previous fires outside the boundaries of Harrison? So the 5 that were in 2023 within 25 kilometers of Harrison, and also the one just up on, I believe it was Bear Mountain, which was less than 20 kilometers from Harrison, east of Harrison. And then I know I did add the potential wildfire that we could have had last or this year up on Agassiz Mountain. Just wondering if those took any, were brought into you guys', I guess, can't really call it a decision to make the risk low, but if those were factors as well.
Good questions. Yeah, so I guess I'll just mention that there is these 2 parts to the plan. We have this quantitative analysis where we put in the fuel type, the topography, the weather, and we produce this threat map. And then there's the more discussion portion. So where we take what we get from this analysis as well as all the other information, and we discuss it, and we figure out what what our recommendations should be. So the historical fires, they would go into this analysis. I'd have to look like at our methodology in detail to see how much so. I guess even though there's been fires in this area, this methodology applies across the province in those areas that have way more fires. So just because there's been fires, it's totally believable that the rating would still come out low. So that's the one part. And then in terms of, you know, what to make, I guess, of the fires that have burned in and around Harrison, I did look into this in quite a bit of detail, and I guess the commonalities between those fires seem to be harvested areas. So fire ignition in a not all these fires, but often in next to a cut block, as well as slope. So, and that was something I think we heard as well from a member of the fire services team, is that fires can have an opportunity to spread quickly in the right conditions upslope. And yeah, I guess for Harrison, that's a discussion we make as well, is that it's a positive that most of the values in the town are located at Valley Bottom, and then most of East Sector is flat. So if you're having these fires can and do burn, and they tend to burn upslope in this valley, but they would tend to burn away from town. So that's the information that we took from those historical fire notes.
Curtis, one, follow-up.
Yeah, thank you. Just one last question, and I think we've kind of gone around this a lot here. So, with Councillor Vidal brought up the McCombs Road being a barrier. We all in the fire department know that barriers are big, but the way the trends with wildfires have gone lately is a lot of fires now start with ember fires, which means a road won't do anything with an ember fire. With that being said, was the wind concern in Harrison brought up with this plan?
For wind direction. Yes, it didn't actually factor into our recommendations, because typically with you'd consider prevailing wind direction for planning the location of a proposed fuel treatment potentially. And we are not recommending any further fuel treatment areas in this plan right now on public land. So it didn't really influence any of our recommendations in a meaningful way. Another, I guess, note on wind direction is that we've been hearing a lot from BC Wildfire Service in other areas as well, that because during a storm event when lightning could be coming into an area, you'll often get a reversal in wind directions. You'll get, because our winds are usually southwest prevailing, they'll actually rotate through to come from the north or the northwest. And so they're finding, a lot of communities in the interior have planned fuel breaks to protect against a fire moving from the south, but actually sometimes fires will be coming from the north. And so it's important, I guess, they're really emphasizing for communities not to hang their hat on fires coming from any one direction, and to, I guess, plan more, values out in all directions. Does that sort of answer your question?
Fire Chief?
Yeah, for now that will answer the question. Thanks.
Okay. And I guess if I could add one more thing on the spotting or the ember fire risk, you're absolutely right about that. But I guess the consideration there is also, what can these how much potential spotting behavior can these forests support, right? So not every forest is going to have an equal probability of sending an ember shower into an area, so we don't believe that the East Sector forests have that same spotting potential as a lot of forests. The forests that have the highest potential for spotting would be like more spruce stands, like higher percentage conifer with dense crowns, that, and they with aerial fuels, so like lichens and stuff like that. That is typically what has a higher risk for spotting. So we do think about that.
Thank you. I think you can continue with your presentation on the next question that was submitted in advance.
Okay. Okay, so the next question, and it's good, we've sort of started to touch on some of these. So the question was to please explain how the action items or the report recommendations have been modified, if at all, as a result of changes to the wildfire risk since the last report. So I guess the main shift would be to away from fuel management on public land. We're finding, having prescribed and implemented quite a few fuel treatments in the last 6 years, these treatments have a really high cost, and we have to be really aware whether we're getting the enough of a benefit out of them. So we're shifting for this plan away from that and putting more of a focus on Fire Smart in the home ignition zone. So that term refers to the area up to 30 meters away from homes and structures, as well as a focus on emergency preparedness and on the other Fire Smart disciplines. So this is also a change or a shift that's happening with community wildfire plans on a provincial scale. So that part of that is the change in the name from the protection plan to the resiliency plan, and a focus more on activities that a local government can do within 5 years. Any questions with that one?
It's Councillor Schweinfels.
Thank you, Deb. Just a comment. I was glad to see this recommendation in the report. And to me, the report, if it could be summarized, it really emphasizes the importance of Fire Smart. And I know the Fire Smart fire captain is here today. But it's just so amazing how important that is, that the public get their eaves clean, that they clean up their yard, that they get their properties fire smarted. It was sad to see, but in Jasper, you could see that the fire jumped house to house, but it skipped houses that had good Fire Smart activities. It's not always the case, but you can reduce your potential fire at your house by Fire Smarting. And I think I'm so glad this was emphasized in the report. So thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, so moving on, explaining, I guess, not only how the actions change, but how the priorities change. So that's kind of been answered. So question 4 was a bit different. So the plan's goals on page 15 do not include providing the public with information. Why is this not included? So that's a great question. My answer to that was that there's that section 5.2. So that section 5 is kind of our analysis and action section, our discussion, where we bring together all the aspects of the report. So that section does focus on public education, and our first 8 recommendations in the report are specifically about that. So hopefully, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at those recommendations, but any questions on that one? If not, I'll just proceed.
Yeah, please proceed.
Okay. Okay, so we touched on this with the wind direction. Is this report informed by a change in prevailing wind patterns in comparison? How significant is this? I guess not as much to add to this one, but is there anything else that that you'd like to know about this? Okay, moving on. So question 6, this was a good question, and I think it was brought up in the presentation on the 21st, but we didn't touch on it. But I definitely want to. So this one is about two maps, pages 57 and 61. They show different fire threat. Is it accurate, and why? So the first map, I'll just maybe flip to that slide first to show you. So on the left, this is the map on page 57 that was referred to. So this is the provincial PSTA, or Provincial Strategic Threat Analysis map. So this threat rating is done on public land across the province, and it's a high-level threat analysis that takes vegetation inventory data remotely sensed data and it puts in all these other fire behavior parameters, but importantly, it doesn't have a ground check component. And then the map on the right is the one we were looking at before. So it's our local threat analysis, which takes similar inputs, but it's informed by checking the fuel type locally. And so they have extremely different threat ratings. And I've actually rarely seen such a discrepancy as we saw in this plan. So it's pretty odd for, even though the province has the East Sector lands also typed as partly deciduous and partly mixed wood. It's really strange actually that it came out as a high threat for their layer. And I did inquire with BCWS, that's BC Wildfire Service, who manages this database. I did ask about why that might be, and they didn't really have any particular answers. They're kind of puzzled as well. But I guess just understanding that there can be glitches in this system because it's not always ground checked. So that's, yeah, very, very different maps. So I guess I'll just go back a slide. So my explanation was, yeah, they're just different. They're different rating systems, and I guess it underlines the importance of having a local plan that does a more ground checked analysis. Any questions there?
Just one from me, just so
Yeah.
I can really make sure I understand. So in your view, your advice would be to rely on the local one rather than the provincial scale one.
Yeah, that would be my advice. If a community has a CWRP with a local fire threat analysis, that would be the data to use. Yeah, it would be more reliable.
I don't see any comments or other questions, so please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So question 7, why is there no emphasis on protection of our current evacuation route? Should we not invest in equipment training and other measures to ensure smooth evacuations and ensure the road can remain open? Yeah, so great question. And my answer to that was that there was no concerns raised during the development of this plan about the current evacuation route. But evacuation in general and emergency planning for sure was a subject of importance. So we have a couple action items that do address evacuation modeling and emergency plan testing, as well as fire department training. That's another one, of which scenarios would include evacuations using the current route. So we discussed during this plan is how Harrison might want to consider traffic modeling, which is something we saw in Whistler when we were updating their plan. They had a traffic model done as part of their emergency plan, which is really illuminating to understand, with roads of certain widths and X number of people, the number of hours required to evacuate a community. So I think that is something that we're recommending Harrison consider, just to bolster the emergency and evacuation planning understanding. Does that address that question?
Councillor Swinbanks?
Thank you. Yeah, this might be more of an internal question. I think this is of utmost importance. People are concerned about evacuating if they ever need to. Hopefully it'll never happen. But maybe it's a question to either CAO or fire chief. Have we done anything to protect our primary evacuation route? And is there any other equipment requirements that we need to invest in as part of this resiliency plan? Maybe a question for both of you. I don't know.
Sorry, was that a question for me or for the
Question
fire
for the
department?
presenter, Councillor Swinbanks?
Yeah, maybe, do you want to talk about it later then, so we don't waste Deb's time? It's just more of a question internally. Have we invested time and finances and resources on our evacuation route? And is there more that we need to do in the future?
CAO Cook, you are.
Thank you,
Yes,
Your Worship. At this date, as you know, the application is in a very preliminary stage. There hasn't been anything put towards both effort and or finances towards any resiliency plan or anything like that. But that wouldn't make, it would have to make a part of the process if and when the province decides to move forward with that.
Sorry, just to be clear, I was referring to our main evacuation route out here. That's the one I'm referring to.
My apologies. I thought you were talking about the secondary. Throughout that corridor, I don't believe that there's has to be any consideration at this time. If there was anything that was close to the road, I would think that that would be in the District of Kent, because I believe the highway has pretty good separation from any of the crown land or anything like that, and the right-of-way seems to be fairly secure. I mean, there's obviously residential properties would have trees maybe close to the boundary, but the highway itself doesn't have anything that I would say that would be, put the evacuation at risk.
Yeah, I think this is something that probably a little bit outside the scope of our own community one, but I guess the question is if we're threatened, our existing evacuation route on Hot Springs Road out to the south, want to make sure that all village residents can be evacuated safely and efficiently. I think that's the bottom line. And if I'm reading the answer to this, no concerns were raised, and is that an accurate statement about our expectation about being able to evacuate safely and efficiently? CEO Cook, is there an answer?
Yeah, like I stated before, the highway itself, I believe, is like I can't think of any section that would be put at risk. But obviously, throughout if properties are fire smarting, that might come up at that time. But as mentioned, the section that moves into the District of Kent, say Striker's Corner, for example, there are fairly steep slopes with deciduous trees on either side that potentially could be a challenge. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the District of Kent is doing their wildfire protection plan, or they have theirs, or doing their CWRP as well. So that would fall on their responsibility. But certainly from throughout Harrison, I can't think of a location that would be any riskier than others.
Thank you. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Just a couple of comments on this particular question. The issue of the primary evacuation route down Hot Springs Road has constantly been raised at our Joint Emergency Planning Committee, and we are working closely with Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Not only because the concern, especially with Harrison, is the potential for a bottleneck at the 7 and 9. And we would probably see this more acutely should there be a fire, natural disaster, or something on Highway 1 east of Laidlaw, where traffic would be rerouted to come down Highway 7 between Hope and Agassiz. But I know we're a little off topic here, but I do want it to be noted that this is an ongoing item and issue at the Joint Emergency Planning Committee. And also regarding the second evacuation route, that the Joint Emergency Planning Committee, once again, along with this council, Kent Council, and it's not indicated in the report, but I do want to also advise that Seabird Island is also included in a potential second evacuation route, and that we will continue to advocate on the provincial level to see that become a reality. This has been in the works and been advocating for over 20 years. So those are my comments, Mayor Talon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. CAO Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wondered if we might be able to turn over to our fire chief and perhaps he could discuss or maybe even expand on the training that the fire department has received or is planning to receive regarding protecting evacuation routes, and perhaps that's might be something that could maybe reduce some concern.
Fire Chief, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, there is discussion over this evacuation route, the main evacuation route from Hot Springs Road. What people have to realize is that when an evacuation is being ordered, people have already been notified via an alert, and it won't be where it's, okay, everybody leave now. There will be strategic areas within Harrison Hot Springs that will go out at certain times, which will help alleviate that bottleneck at 7 and 9. Also, with that being said, we do understand that, yeah, people will leave on their own, but like Councillor Vidal said, the Kent Harrison Joint Committee is working on this, and I believe there is a plan being made up. So the Harrison Hot Springs Fire Department is aware of the concerns, and yeah, I believe this question was based on my recommendation that there is no concern from the fire department, because we know that there is a plan there. It just hasn't come out yet.
Thank you, Fire Chief. Councillor Swinebutts.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to expand on this evacuation business. You know, and when you reflect on this and talking to fire departments and traffic people, and I just cannot imagine why our main evacuation route would ever be blocked for more than a couple of hours. And the scenario has come up, well, what if 7 and 9 gets blocked? Well, it's a car accident. We clear it out. I just want to make sure that we're laser focused in this plan and in the future on our evacuation route going south. I think any other evacuation route to the north is dangerous for residents of Harrison Hot Springs. I think it's a pie in the sky dream that likely won't happen. And I think in our lifetime, we need to stay laser focused on the southern evacuation route. And I want to make sure that all of our emotional capital, all of our financial capital, and political capital is spent on that along with Kent. Thank you.
Fire Chief.
Yeah, just one more point to that. It's not just the Harrison Hot Springs Fire Department that will be involved with the evacuation route. The RCMP will be involved. Search and rescue will most likely be in there also. So there's multiple agencies that are involved with this, that at the end of the day, we all work together to make sure that the evacuation route is being followed and that people are actually using that and being on that road safely and not causing any accidents. Can we predict if an accident isn't going to happen? No, but at the same time, there'll be routes where people can go, and the RCMP will have members posted at certain areas. And that 7 and 9, there will be a member there or a traffic person from Modi conducting traffic instead of them following the four-way stop. So there is a procedure from the RCMP that is already on books when it comes to evacuation routes. It just has to be implemented, and of course, practicing it is not the easiest thing to do.
Councillor Fascio.
Thank you, Your Worship. While we're on this subject, I'll be very brief. I can appreciate everybody's concerns at how to get out of Harrison. Having two ways out is better than one. So whether it's going south or going east, it's very important that we have these routes in place. As our fire chief has just stated, many agencies come together when there's an emergency. We dealt with this a few years back when the army was here to evacuate us down south with all the farm animals from the District of Kent and Harrison. We were on standby. So many agencies come together. The other route, of course, that's been alleviated from all this, we keep mentioning south and 7 and 9, of course, is the Gulf Road and McCullum to number 7 and Mount Woodside. That's another way to get out as well, which many people may not think about that, but I have. So that's another way that we can reroute people as well. But as the fire chief says, they have there's a plan in place with these agencies where not everybody's going to come rushing out of their homes. You'll be asked to leave at certain times, maybe A, B, C, or D, whatever it works out. I believe this worked very well in Kelowna when they had the fires there, how people were evacuated orderly and without any problems. So I think we're too far into this alternate route, and with our neighbours of District of Kent, we have to keep moving forward. And it's what, like I said earlier on, it's better to have two ways out than one way out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. Ms. Zemanek, please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. So question 8, our main fire station is vulnerable without a fire hydrant and the installation of a hydrant in its vicinity should be considered. So my comment to that was that we are happy to include that as a recommendation. We didn't put it in the plan because it was unclear whether or not that was already being addressed. There was mention of some new hydrants, I think, that were being installed. So I will leave that to the village to, I guess, direct us as to whether you'd like an additional recommendation.
DAO Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Deb. I think that can stay out of the plan because this plan is more about building resiliency as a community as a whole. That would be an operational decision, and Chief Genest and myself and our CFO spoke about that, and we'll be looking at that further on later this month during our budget talks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So,
sorry,
before you
Deb.
go on,
So just to clarify, sorry, a fire hydrant does, the infrastructure along our evacuation route is critically important. And I know there's 30 recommendations here. Maybe I can make it on the report so that we understand and are laser focused as a council and as the administration that it has to be done and as a priority, a very high priority. So I don't want to leave it out of the focus of us.
okay, understood. Maybe we'll.
DAO Cook, just a quick comment.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Schweinbenz. This additional hydrant, from what I understand, is it will build some resiliency, but Hot Springs Road itself has enough fire hydrants down it to be able to protect structures. This is more of it may provide more resiliency to the fire hall itself, but the fire hall does have a current standpipe that would assist in protecting the structure itself. But this would be more of it would obviously add some resiliency, but it would more be used for training, as I understand through Fire Chief Genest. Obviously, it would add additional protection to the structure and the structures in the area. But this is a budget item that we're talking about, and we understand that the fire chief has asked for it. So, I mean, if it's council's desire to keep it in the plan, they can certainly do that or add it to the plan. That's fine. but I can assure you that we're working with the fire department to look at this.
Councillor Swinbank.
Yeah, honestly, it might be something we consider to put it in the plan. And I'm reminded, I think it was the Rock Creek Fire up in the Shuswap. They lost their evacuation center and their fire hall to fire. And I don't know I don't know what the details were, but I think protecting our hall and our communication center and our evacuation uh, uh, center is of critical importance. So I don't know if this is happening next year, but I think it sounds like it's a priority. So maybe there's other comments from staff. I don't know.
I guess my question is, in question 8 here, it presumes that the planning and coordination center is vulnerable today. Is that in fact the case, or if someone could expand on that, like what is the risk to our fire hall emergency planning coordination center today without the hydrant? Is it at risk? CEO Cook?
I can't speak to the technical side. Maybe Deb can expand on that, but Fire Hall Park has been fire smarted, so the trees have been laddered and the fuels have been removed from that area. There are trees that are relatively close to the building that could be considered maybe for removal, but other than that, the building itself is a concrete structure. So I can't imagine that there would be I mean, it has Droid shingles, but other than that, I can't imagine that there's anything that would put it at higher risk, but perhaps Deb could speak to that from a protection plan lens.
Hi, I can't really speak to the water requirements for structural fire protection. That's really out of my scope. So I will just default to what staff and what fire department thinks about this one. It's certainly possible for us to add a recommendation probably after in the cross training section. Yeah, after a recommendation we have on training, it would be easy for us to add one that just says, Harrison Hot Springs Fire Department is currently well resourced for interface fire protection and structural fire protection, and any keep reviewing needs for water delivery for suppression and address them, or something like that would give clear direction, because obviously having adequate hydrant coverage is an important aspect of fire safety and fire smart.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, maybe you can go to your next question, Mr. Stefanik.
Thank you. Okay, so we've basically addressed this one too, about new hydrants and equipment to serve certain areas of the village. Any follow-up on this one? No. Okay, moving on to question 10. So this
Just,
one was,
interrupt you there, sorry.
yes, go ahead.
Councillor Fascio.
Thank you, Your Worship. If there is a concern. I believe is that 9. I believe we're dealing with that our staff is regarding expanding the fire hydrants to McPherson. Through you to our CAO, if I may. Thank you.
The CAO Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship. That is correct. We are exploring, we're in the planning stages or creating a plan. I'd have to defer to our Director of Operations to see where we are in the plan creation. But the thought is that we'll be looking for funding to be able to achieve that. Perhaps we could get an update from Jace.
Director of Operations.
Sorry, you mind repeating the question?
If I understood the CAO, he was looking for an update on the work towards putting hydrants down Macombs towards McPherson.
Yes, currently we have the drawings are underway, and we are about 90% on review for that. So once those are in place, then we'll be looking at funding for that project.
That answer your question, Councillor Fascia? Yeah. Further comments on this one? Please proceed, Ms. Semenek.
Thank you very much. So question 10 was about, it's a long one, about forest practices. So I kind of brought that up earlier when we were talking about historical fires in the area, and there is often fires in the Fraser Valley that do burn through cut blocks. And this question was kind of about that and about how logging practices could be changed. But that really is out of the scope of this plan, in particular, how it relates to BCTS practices. So my answer to that was just that that be brought up with the Ministry of Forests directly. Is that satisfactory?
I'm guessing probably no, but I'm going to turn to Mr. Councillor Swinebens.
Thanks, Deb. This was my question at the last few, I think, were. Yeah, I mean, you're a forester, and we've had tremendous difficulty with forest fires in BC over the last several years. That's not no secret. And there's been a lot of studies done that show that the forest practices are the problem, or a great contributor to the problem. I've got a couple of studies here in front of me. I can send them to council if you like. But it's clear that the logging practices that are happening in the Harrison watershed are making us less resilient. We're cutting down biodiverse forests and replacing them with monoculture of coniferous trees, whatever they may be. The clear cutting itself increases heat and lowers humidity and creates a big problem all around us. And in fact, the BCTS and the logging industry has quite a few clear cuts planned for within just a few kilometers of our village. In fact, just over on the other side of Mount Woodside, there's a large one that was just completed. So, and maybe this isn't for you, Deb, but I think us as a council and as administration, as a village, we need to somehow get control of this. We need to have an input on what kind of practices and clear cuts are done in our watershed, because I think if we want to make a difference in our wildfire resiliency plan, this is the kind of activity we need to stop or address. There's better, I'm not trying to take away logging jobs, not at all. I want to enhance them, but there's probably better forest practices that we can do, that we can insist on in our watershed so that everybody's happy. There's got to be a balance, and I don't think that we're striking it right now. They've got this figured out in some Northern European countries, and I know that our topography is different, but there's got to be a better way. And also, I think we need to partner with Kent. The reality is we're a postage stamp size village embraced by this massive Kent. And there's clear cuts going on in Kent that affect us, that are just over on the other side of the mountain. So I know it's probably not in the scope of of this report. I was hoping to get some direction as to what we could do with a UBCM perhaps, or the Lower Mainland Municipality Group in the spring when we meet with them. Maybe we can come together and have some kind of a consensus on how we approach this logging in our watersheds and our municipalities, because this is the biggest risk factor that I can see.
Councillor Fascia.
Thank you, thank you, Your Worship. If I may suggest, it's obviously a very complex and difficult decisions to make, but like Councillor Schweinberg just said, I think the way maybe to start to address this will be through resolution to a UBCM, meet with the forestry minister. We'll have that direction in the new year when we can meet with ministers, and that might be one way to, and also we could also, through our representative, Councillor Vidal, maybe we could address this also in the spring at the LMLGA conference as well, which would go to UBCM, whichever way that councils decide they want to go with this. But I think that's the first step to address this, because it's very complex, and you know, it's not just can't, something isn't going to be stopped overnight, or maybe not even probably even thought about, but it's something again that should be addressed at the right time with the right agencies, and the forestry department minister will be the way to go with UBCM and probably through LMLGA as well. Thank you.
Councillor Swinburne.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fascio. I agree. I think starting at the Lower Mainland Group and the UBCM would be fantastic. But perhaps something more immediate. I met with the BCTS earlier this week, and they're willing to discuss their plans and maybe even change their plans to make it safer around our community. But they're only 20% of what the logging that's going on up the lake. The other 80% is controlled by another agency who I haven't contacted yet. But it also may start with Kent, and I would encourage this council perhaps to reach out to Kent, or administration to reach out to Kent, because as I said, we're embraced by them. The logging activities that are going on on their lands and on Seabird potentially is what impacts us in our danger rating. So I'd like to see something more immediate than just waiting till the fall.
I've got to confess, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, I think it's out of scope for our conversation today. If we want to pick this up, this to me is touching on much broader issues that obviously Kent and forestry and practices, things I don't have a ton of knowledge on. I would start with, I'm not sure if the whole Harrison Lake watershed is entirely in the District of Kent, so I'd like to know exactly what we're talking about here. And so maybe it's a conversation that we need as a council at some point to talk about if we are indeed going to speak to this as a village expressing concerns. And I think that's the first thing. Are we going to voice concerns about forestry practices, whether it's for wildfire threats or for some other purpose? And if so, what would our message be as a council? But I think we're approaching on a different conversation where we'd need some different information and different input. Councillor Vidal?
Thank you, Mayor Talon, through you to Councillor Schweinbetz. And first of all, I appreciate Councillor Fascio bringing up the proper procedure. And I'll be very brief so we can move on. Councillor Schweinbetz, if you would like some information on how to approach Lower Mainland LGA, the first step is, of course, endorsement at this council level for a resolution. That will then go to Lower Mainland LGA, and if you decide that that's the way you want to go, then you can work with staff to draft up that resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vidal. Councillor Jackson.
Your worship, in all due respect, 207, I believe it was, then Mayor Fascio and I met with the district forestry. They told us at that time that they'd probably finish all the clear cutting in the east side or Harrison 209. Now we are here many years and they're still logging. The government tells us they're not logging in old growth forests, but they are. I mean, this is an issue far beyond what we can ever deal with. This is a political issue. It all has to do with jobs, and we can try what we want, but I don't think we have any hope of advancing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you. Yeah, we could beat a dead horse, but I didn't get into politics to just let things go, and I hope that we can make some changes that will improve the logging industry and improve our safety. Actively right now, they're removing the deciduous trees, either mechanically or chemically. These are the trees that protect us and suppress fires. They're actively removing these in these clear cuts and replanting trees that are susceptible to fire. So these are things that I think as a council, we're going to bring this up in the future, I hope. But as you said, they were supposed to be done in 2009. It continues. I think citizens that I've heard from are tired of the hundreds of logging trucks that go down our streets every spring and every summer. We get the chemical problems with our lake. And now we're hearing about this forest fires is actually caused by these activities. So I'm really hoping that as a council, we can come together and come up with a plan, either through EBCM or the LGA, to try and make an impact. Thank you.
Ms. Zemanek, please continue.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the next question. So it was a comment on how if fires along Harrison Lake are generally small and slowly moving up slope, early detection is good due to all the users out on the lake, and there's excellent suppression potential for fires in this area. What therefore is the need for a secondary egress route? So we, I guess, did already discuss this, and I believe it was a counselor that brought up, 2 evacuation routes is better than 1. And that definitely is the view of the NFPA. So that's the National Fire Protection Association, I think. I might stand to be corrected. But anyways, it's a standard on how communities protect themselves against fire. And it's highly recommended to have 2 evacuation routes. That's a basic standard. So primary routes can be blocked. And well, I guess we'll just leave it at that unless there is the need for further discussion.
Councilor Swinbanks.
Thanks, Deb.
Mhm.
Yeah, the point I was trying to make there is that we all know that the fires are on Rockwell. It happens every 5-10 years. And I remember camping with the kids up at Hicks Lake, and there was one on Rockwell, and we were blocked for about 2 or 3 hours. And in your report, it confirmed that. The fires are small, they're slow, and they go uphill for the most part. And I just don't know why we would advocate for a route that would send Harrison residents towards that. And that's the point I was trying to make. And I'm not sure why it's in the report. It's on recommendation 18. I'm not sure if you included the route through the park because it's already in the works. Councillor Fascio said that 2 is better than 1. Obviously 2 is better than 1. We all agree 2 is better than 1. Of course, there's hundreds of towns in BC that only have 1 route out, or one of them. I'd love to have 2 routes, but the north route, I think, makes things worse. It's unsafe. I know that there's local residents that are willing to bring their chainsaw and their excavators up, and I love them. I think the historical perspective is that supported that, but the new science, the new reality shows that a route through the park will only increase the number of backcountry users. It's going to increase logging activity. In your report, you mentioned that a lot of these fires are caused by persons, so we're sending more persons into the backcountry. And I'm just categorically approved to that second route. That's why I want to stay off that topic and stay laser focused on our main route or another route through Gulf Road, as Councillor Fascio said. I've biked and hiked through that proposed secondary route through the park. Even if we can fix that 2 kilometers that needs to be fixed, the rest of it's rough also. Currently, there's no plan in place by the province or by anybody to do a proper evacuation route through that park. And I just think we need to stay laser focused on what we've got. Thank you.
Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Through you to Council Schweinbentz. I'm going to challenge you, Councillor. I believe that there are some misinformation or inaccuracies in the comments that you have made regarding the second evacuation route and the need for it. It is not just Harrison. It is involving Kent and Seabird Island. So at any time, I would be more than happy to sit with you and fill you in on the processes that Harrison, Kent, and Seabird Island have gone through in the construction and the potential construction of the second egress route. Ultimately, it's up to the province, not to us. Thank you.
Councillor Swinbanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I thank you for that information. I'm new to this process. I've been watching it for years. People have been saying that they've been talking about this for 20 years, and that's my point. I think they could be talking this for another 20 years. I saw the application. All the proposals, or sorry, all the scenarios of a potential problem on Rockwell, in fact, blocked Harrison residents. So I'm just saying that proposed route is not for Harrison. That route, as I said, even if we fix that 2 kilometers, it's a rough road on the other side. It is not for minivans and Honda Accords in its current state on the other side of that gap, if you will. There's I think it was quoted, there's 188 dwellings north of Harrison along Rockwell, all the way to Cascade Bay. The vast majority are part-time. Almost all of them have boats. And sending them through a park into a high fire zone during fires causes a problem in itself. And I'll challenge any rationale that would cause us to not be laser focused on what we've got. I don't think we should spend any capital at all on a secondary route that goes through a park that's not going to serve our residents, and is in fact causes us to be less fire resilient. It causes more potential problems than what we've got now. Thank you.
Councillor Fascia.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to everybody, I think this is an issue that's still has a lot of discussion to be dealt with. It's still with the province and with the District of Kent and ourselves. There's lots more to be involved, and with respect, could we move on and leave this to another time that we can have another meeting with the District of Kent or the emergency program to deal with this and maybe get more information, because there's still relative outstanding correspondence that the province is still waiting for. So I believe there's more to be discussed, and could we move on? Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Just one short comment. In the flood of 48, 49, they evacuated people from Harrison by boat up the Harrison River, which was a logical thing to do at the time. Now, with the fact that we now have Sandpiper and there's very good docking, because not too long ago, you were able to take a boat from the resort to there for golfing. And that is another good logical route that we should be exploring. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I agree. We should probably move on. It's the action item 18, secondary egress route, and I guess at some point, maybe during our conversation, it's rated as a moderate priority. And I do agree, two routes out are always better than one. Better to have some redundancy. But again, my bottom line, I think for the village, looking at it through that lens, is that we need a safe and effective, efficient evacuation route for residents. And I think what we heard earlier was that the existing route out down Hot Springs Road to the corner of 7 and 9 seems to be, I haven't heard anyone say it was bad. In fact, they said it seems to be okay. So my only point would be, I understand there's been lots of discussion in the past about a secondary route, and it's with the province and those things. For the village ourselves and our own plans, to me, it's a nice to have, not a need to have. And I would think a priority for a secondary egress road of moderate may be overstating what we actually need today for this plan at this time. So maybe at some point we consider whether rating it as a low priority is nice to have. We're not perhaps opposed to it. We know the province is going to have to make the decision ultimately. And if it can be a safe evacuation route, that's, I guess, for whoever's going to design the road that goes through the park to make sure it's safe and that it doesn't create secondary issues in an evacuation. So that's my suggestion right now, to just leave the conversation here at this point. We'll probably have to return to it when we look at the whole report and consider adopting it. Would that be acceptable, and move to the next question? for now. We'll come back to this. I don't think we're done this conversation. All right. Mrs. Emenek, the next question, please.
Great. Okay, so question 12. Again, we sort of have started to introduce this subject, but a majority of fires are human-caused ignitions from recreation, gunfire, campfires, and residential burning. Why then is there not a recommendation to limit, restrict, or stop backcountry users from accessing the area during extreme fire conditions? So that's a good question. My answer to that is that BC Wildfire Service and the Ministry of Forests can restrict what is termed a high risk activity. So anything that could cause an ignition. So that's typically like mechanical work and as well shooting and campfires during the fire season. So this plan is recommending more signage as well as some partnership with other agencies to communicate these sort of dangers to tourists, but we didn't see the need for Harrison Hot Springs to advocate for more enforcement or regulation from the province. Any questions?
Councillor Swinburne.
Yeah, this was my question again, and we're seeing a lot of human-induced fires, and I just think we should work with the Ministry of Transportation, maybe BC Parks, and maybe we should think about asking them to restrict the amount of traffic that's going up Rockwell to do backcountry activities. We even saw within our village limits, BC Hydro contractor who's starting a fire. So maybe we should help them be more aware of our concerns in the future if they're going to be doing bush clearing and that sort of thing. So it's not just the campers, it's other things that we should be aware of. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. If that's seen as an important thing to include in the document, then I'll take a look and maybe we can discuss adding in some sort of wording to that effect.
Question, Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I just wanted to comment as when I read this question from Councillor Schweinbenz, I was thinking, as he's indicated, that would be more in consultation with BC Parks and other nearby stakeholders. But I did just want to touch on how in 2023, we did close some of our trailheads in conjunction with the village office and the fire department. So we do look internally at our own kind of control areas during high risk seasons, and just wanted to talk about that here. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. That's helpful. Ms. Emenek, the next question, please.
Okay. So question 13. Oh, and this is the last one. So as an alternative to a secondary access route through a park, should there not be more options to mitigate risk, such as an emphasis on fire smart, fire breaks, and equipment? So we did kind of discuss this, and I guess the answer to summarize is that we are emphasizing residential fire smart as one of the key gaps to address in this plan when it comes to resiliency, but risk can never be completely mitigated. So that's one of the reasons we still included recommendations on improving evacuation planning and resources.
So if I understand your answer to this question, it's we should look to ourselves first and fire smarting properties. And I guess I have a question. It's more for the administration. Have the village properties been fire smart assessed, and are they fire smarted today? Like, you start at home.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to pass that to Christy because she has some numbers on people that have participated in the most recent initiative.
Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Were you referencing specifically village-owned properties?
Yes.
Thank you. That was my understanding. Yes, Thomas, our local fire smart representative, did do thorough assessments of all village-owned buildings as well as our critical infrastructure. And so we have a great deal of recommendations that we are going to be taking into consideration in the budget planning in the next Fire Smart grant intake, as well as just in the 2025 general operating budget.
Okay, if there's no other comments on that question, that's the end of what I had prepared, so I'm happy to
Oh.
answer. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just to follow up on that question, yeah, maybe our Smart Fart captain is going to talk about the importance of fire. I hope we would talk about that so that people can hear it. And Deb, again, you mentioned the evacuation route. And I never disagreed that there shouldn't be an evacuation route. Another one added would be awesome. And you mentioned that in your answer, that there another evacuation route. And that's why I had the question earlier this morning as to why through the park. That's kind of what I wanted to clarify. I think we all agree another one would be nice, but not that one, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Fascio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I fully approve of this new plan of yours. Obviously, there are a lot of budgetary items that have to be discussed here with our CAO and the our financial officer regarding the certain equipment areas, but also the one thing I would like to see happen. It did start this year in the late or beginning of the fall. I think it would be very good to remind. You see, everybody's very quickly to point the finger at councils, but a lot of responsibility lies with the homeowners and how you look after your property. We do have one of our fire department personnel that's going around homes and doing assessments for those that require, and I think that's a great program that we've got a grant for. But I think that in the spring and the fall, we should have an area where there be a chipper where people can get rid of a lot of the stuff that needs to be cleared from their homes, instead of trying, if you don't have a truck, it's very difficult to take the stuff to the Agassiz place, which is only once a year, I believe, they have a cleanup. So I would like to see the program extended to spring and fall for cleanup of your homes, and maybe I suppose it would have, maybe the equipment would have to be moved around the village or have a central location. I would leave that in the hands of through you, Mr. Mayor, hands of the staff. But I think that should be put in our budget consideration, that to have a chipper and a cleanup truck, whatever's needed for people to clean up their backyards and areas that may be affected, God forbid, if there was a fire. Thank you. And again, thank you for your presentation. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you. Deb, question for you. There's been new studies and data released about forest thinning. And I know that we have a demonstration forest thinning project happening on the Spirit Trail. There's new data coming out of a study done in Whistler that shows that the forest thinning is actually making things worse. Can you can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, we're aware of that study, and I guess the thinning can take place at a variety of scales. So we use thinning to describe the removal of small trees, but I think what the study in Whistler really showed is that creating gaps in the canopy is what can dry out a forest, and thus the surface fuels on the ground. And so in a fuel treatment, like I believe what's prescribed for the Spirit Trail, that would not be what's recommended. That's not best management practices for the coast, for the Fraser Valley. It would be the removal of more sapling trees that are not part of the canopy. So we're talking, 7 centimeter diameter or less. These are the trees that are usually dying or suppressed in a forest, in many forests anyways, or it would be pruning. So it's often when we talk about fuel treatments, everyone's got their own image in their minds. But I would just, I guess, say that, these prescriptions are developed by professional foresters, and that thinning can really mean a lot of things. And yeah, we're in this field, we're very much on board with not opening up the forest canopy, especially in these wet areas, but understanding that there can be benefits by reducing those ladder fuels, those smaller suppressed sapling trees, and fuel that's on the ground, as well as the lower branches. So does that answer that?
Yes, thanks. So I guess it's methodology. It's how you do it is,
Mhm.
is okay. I'd also, you know, a cornerstone of this report is fire smarting. And I know that we have a fire smart technician here, and I'm wondering if we can hear from him what challenges he's had, what kind of uptake he's had, and how we can empower him or our department or our community to do a better job. Sorry to put you on the stop, Tom, on the spot.
CAO Cook, do we have some statistics or data readily at hand, or can someone speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll pass it down to our, what do we call you now? Is it the Fire Smart representative, local Fire Smart representative? And he can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I'm your man. We just started this year doing the Fire Smart assessments. Didn't take off as well as I had hoped. People are a little reluctant to have me come by and tell them to get rid of their hedges, et cetera, et cetera. But we did about 30 assessments this year. Half of them really could use some fire smarting, and half of those actually did some of the fire smarting I recommended. So I was a little bit happy with that. I could see it kind of taking off as neighbors talk to neighbors and they see me hanging around. They go, hey, there's Tom. And it's starting to spread. This year was a bit of a wet, not a hot, dry season. So it wasn't on top of everybody's mind. But I do feel it's picking up. I've talked to other Fire Smart representatives in Hope and Mission. I got some ideas working with Christy, of course. She's always got great ideas. And I can see moving forward that it's going to be a better plan. I think we're going to be, not a better plan, but I mean, I think we're going to get a better reception. The green bin thing was fantastic. I don't know if I like the idea of chipping, because that sounds like you need a technician there because they're a bit dangerous. But hauling the stuff away like we did with the green bins, 2 or 3, I think, Christy, 2, yeah, it was a big hit. And plus our big banner in it. And it just showed we're taking initiative and helping people, and it seems to be catching on, but this is just the first year. So let's just see, how it goes next year. I'm going to continue, I hope, doing it. It's quite a lot of fun. It's great meeting people, and those little booklets that we hand out that Fire Smart has, that Christy has tons of. They're great reading, and people get it, and again, that inspires them to ask me to come over because I always see something they miss. And it's coming along well, I think. So there's always going to be some people that just aren't going to get rid of that hedge leaning up against their house. But you never know. Maybe next year I'll have more luck.
Thank you. Councillor Swinbanks.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I would what's come out of this report is the importance of Fire Smart. And if people are really concerned about being fire resilient, it's not about the big things. It's about the little things. It's about cleaning your eaves, as you've always said, Tom, cleaning up your yard, getting rid of the close hedges to your house. And I would like to see administration and council really embrace this, so that by the time July 1st comes, by the time fire season starts next year, maybe we've got way more than 30. Maybe half the village can be fire smarted, including our own properties. I just think if there's one thing that we take out of this report and accomplish today, that is that we really have to get going on Fire Smart as a village. So thanks for that report. I hope that we can empower you and all of us to do better with this program. Thank you.
CAO Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first step to realizing what the overall effect of this, fire smarting, all of these practices, is going to be adopting this plan, because this plan is what informs our ability to apply for further funding. So it's important that we, as soon as we can, get this adopted so we can get our funding request in as soon as possible.
Thank you for that context. Ms. Zemanek, I thank you for your time and thoroughly and helpfully answering the questions that we provided. I found it very informative and give me a better sense of the report and understand what it means to the village. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
I note the time is just past 11:30. Is there, do we need to take a quick, it's called a recess, a break for maybe 10 minutes, or do we want to break for an early lunch and come back to the Lance master plan, or push through? And I look for some sense from council here. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. I wouldn't mind a short break, please. And then I would suggest we carry on.
Hearing that, we make a motion for a recess for 10 minutes. Is that sufficient? 10 minutes second? We don't need to second in a committee whole. Oh my goodness, we can just say we agree, we take a break. We'll reconvene at 11:45. I see the time is 11:45. I'll ask people to take their seats again. Thank you. That's all right. Councillor Fascio, is he, I don't want him to miss anything. Oh, he's making coffee. We'll hold for an important coffee break here for Councillor Fascio. I hear the machine running. Lindsay, just hold on a minute and we'll be right with you. It's okay. We're good. Coffee's important. We're about to start the item master plan update, Civic Lands master plan update, and I'll turn the floor over to Lindsay Fryatt-Jerk from Modus.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for having us today to provide an update on the Village Lands Master Plan process. My name is Lindsay Fryatt-Yerke, and I'm a senior urban designer with Modus Planning, Design, and Engagement. And I'm joined by my colleague, Valeria Perez-Malvido. We have a brief presentation to share with you today. So we'll provide you an update on what we've completed so far, and we'll provide an overview as well of our next steps. In terms of the agenda, we'll be starting with a project overview. What are we planning? What area are we planning for? Why is this work important and what are our goals? And we'll also share a bit of an overview of our team. We'll then move on to some initial site observations, what we know about the site and have observed so far. I'm then going to hand it over to Val, and she'll summarize what we heard at the open house a couple of weeks ago. We'll talk about the upcoming design charrette process, so what it includes, why we're taking this approach, and how the community and council will be involved. And then we've held some time at the end for discussion, so we can hear from you if there's anything that you'd like us to be aware of or keep in mind as we move on to our next steps. So in terms of the site, these are the lands that we'll be preparing a vision for. The process is focused on, it's a really key site for the village of Harrison. And why is this important? Well, a strong vision for the site will allow us to ensure that future decisions and investments are strategic and support a diversity of community needs. In terms of our goals through the process, we're going to be identifying the site's strengths, opportunities, and challenges. We'll be looking for ways to support current and future community needs, and we'll be establishing a vision that will inform future decision-making. And how do we get there? Our process includes 3 phases, and it's focused on a method that allows us to weave in community input. So we're currently just at the end of phase 1. We've done a bit of background research and mapping. We participated in a community engagement through the open house to establish initial understanding of the site and community needs. And we're here at our update meeting. The next step includes additional site analysis, identification of potential programs for the site, including what their spatial requirements might be. And then we're hosting the main event in this phase is a design charrette where we will be receiving public input as well. So finally, in the last phase, we'll be preparing a draft report and presenting it to council and finalizing the report. Our team is focused on a core team of urban designers. We bring expertise in community engagement, architecture, landscape architecture, and delivering design charrette processes that allow us to design collaboratively with communities. Edward and Val and I have attended the open house and will be involved in all aspects of the community engagement, design, and report and vision document process. Edward is a Modus principal and senior urban designer, and I'm acting as the project manager. We're also joined by Cal Strigley, who is a Modus associate. He has a background in architectural technology, and he develops exceptional illustrations and hand drawings to communicate design visions. So we're really happy to have him as a part of our team. So some of our initial site observations are that this site is, for one, a prime location. It's within walking distance to the waterfront and shops. It's a prominent location. You might consider it to be a gateway. It's highly visible, and it marks a shift in your experience as you enter the core of the village. There's a kind of a change in the urban fabric here. Its uses include the new Sasquatch Museum at the corner, which further establishes the site as a gateway, the municipal offices and the works yard. We also know that it's a really important site for overflow parking for events. It has 3 different edge conditions. So when we think about the surrounding land uses, we have Hot Springs Road, trees and a creek to the west, the residential uses to the north and east, and then a school site to the south. So as we're working on our concepts, we'll be thinking about these edges and how we can either sensitively integrate with them or provide sensitive transitions to them, or potentially further connect with them. The site also has good access. So there's rights of way on all sides. There's a bus stop on the site. There are trail connections, and it's highly visible. It has incredible views to the surrounding mountain ranges, and there are a few large trees on site. So Val, I'm going to hand it over to you now. Are you able to unmute?
Wonderful. Thanks, Lindsay. Can I just confirm everyone can hear me properly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. As Lindsay said, I'm Valeria, an urban designer at Modus. I'll be giving an overview of the process of our engagement and what we heard in the first open house. We had a great turnout at the event on October 24th in Memorial Hall. It was great to see several members of council and staff in attendance when we met with the public alongside a number of other projects and community groups. We heard from staff that the estimate of attendees was well over 100, which is certainly reflected in both the quantity and quality of comments and conversations we had with folks. It was a great night full of ideas and thoughtful conversations. So over the next few slides, I'll be giving an overview of what we heard from attendees in the event, recognizing that a more fulsome engagement summary for phase 1 will be available as well. I'll start by providing an overview of what participants shared more broadly than the site alone, as some things they feel the village as a whole would benefit from. Principally, these are understood as amenities and services tailored to residents rather than visitors. We heard that they would like to see a grocery store, a new fire hall, in addition to more housing options brought online, along with civic and medical uses and more public washrooms. We also heard from a number of attendees that parking is an important topic for the community and providing parking for visitors should be a priority for the village. So moving into existing uses, beyond the civic uses that exist on the site today that include the village offices, the Sasquatch Museum and Visitor Center, as well as the Public Works Yard, we asked attendees how they interact with the site, and they listed the following uses. Principally, that is parking for events and visitors, as well as open space and an area for walking their dog off leash. Moving forward and looking at some of the ideas that were generated for the site in the future, the suggested uses categorize themselves into the following top themes. Largely, they related to bookable indoor spaces for all ages, be it giving young adults a safe place to hang out, for seniors to take classes or get together, for children, play spaces when it's raining outside and maybe playgrounds are not an option. The interest seems to lie in a programmable space for the community, which is seen in the suggestions for a recreation or cultural facility, as well as a community hall. We also heard participants note caution not to draw energy away from Agassiz and compete with existing uses there. What we heard was suggestions on locating complementary uses within Harrison, not only as a draw for the region, but to support residents living within the village. Beyond this, we heard that attendees are interested in seeing more housing options for seniors in Harrison and suggesting this could be a good place for that to take shape. We also received some comments relating to improved municipal offices, and there were unsurprisingly comments around keeping parking on site to reduce the stress on residential areas during the peak tourist season or community events like Canada Day. This again is an overview of the project process that Lindsay already recapped. This meeting concludes phase 1, which will focus on early ideas generation with the community, and heading into phase 2 of the project, we'll look at concept development through more technical analysis and site testing during the design charrette. So what is a charrette, you might be asking? Charrette is actually a French word that means cart, and in the 19th century was used to describe an intense effort expended by architects to meet a project deadline, wherein proctors circulated a cart or a charrette to collect final drawings. We use charrettes in many projects to refer to a multi-day series of working sessions with staff, stakeholders, and the public. The concept is similar to a sandbox within the tech realm, if you're familiar, that effectively aims to gather and generate ideas over a concentrated period of time. If you're able to stop by during the 3-day charrette we have planned, you'll understand the sense of a frenzy of sketching and ideation that comes out of it. So why a charrette? Simply put, by gathering a number of groups together, we can conduct focused engagement in short sequence and together land at a shared understanding of challenges and opportunities. This early and ongoing feedback into the design process through check-ins and course corrections will help us arrive at concepts and options in a short period of time. To further unpack the process of the charrette, the next few slides will provide an overview of the schedule and their intended outcomes. So day one of the charrette, we'll start with a visioning session with staff. We'll review what we heard at the open house, as well as detailed information about the site through a technical lens. Staff will have an opportunity to share ongoing conversations they've had with respect to community needs, changes considered on site, or challenges and opportunities they see for this project. We will spend the remainder of day one working as a team to have the ideas discussed with staff, land on a map, so to speak. Day two is effectively a reverse of day one. So we'll work through the morning to continue to evolve the ideas generated the day before and check in with staff to do any course corrections that are necessary. Day three, we will refine the concepts and graphics in preparation for a public pinup where residents will be invited to come tour the working space and look at the ideas and work generated over the previous 3 days. As the second touch point with community, the public will be able to see a good evolution of the project from our first open house, which focused more on kind of blue skies, idea generation, and provide comments having seen more tangible options. Once we gather feedback during the charrette, we will then refine the concept further and package it into a final report that will be presented to council. That is effectively the end of our presentation, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you for that report. Any sense of the timing for this charrette?
We're working with staff. We have a couple of dates that are options identified, and either November or December, the 2 dates that we're looking at currently.
Any comments or questions from council? Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon, through you to our presenter. Thank you for this preliminary report. And one thing I'm really happy to see is the continuing public engagement throughout the whole process. One question is the site tomorrow. One of the questions at the open house is what vision did you see for tomorrow, the site tomorrow? And I'm just wondering, was there any priority put on those points? Like, did one seem to be more prevalent than others? Thank you.
Please answer if you can, Lindsay. Thank you.
Sure. And actually, I will invite Val to respond to that. She summarized and synthesized all of the comments. So she is better able to respond to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So we received, I think the final count was maybe 130 comments, which is a great level of engagement, especially at such an early stage. And I also appreciate the opportunity. I know I speak on behalf of the entire Motus team to be able to check in with the community again. There was, I'd say, if I had to pick, the top theme was certainly, as mentioned in the presentation, a sense of indoor space that the community can gather in. So we'll definitely look to expand upon the program list provided within the RFP that was issued that contained program ideas for the site and community needs, and pair that with what we receive from the public. So a desire to see space where the community can gather that is good for recreation or cultural gatherings, as well as a space for the community, such as a community hall.
Great, thank you so much. Nothing more, Ms.
Councillor Fascio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. Much appreciated. This was part of our conversation with the Minister of UBCM, Minister of Housing, regarding the BC build. And it falls in place with that, whatever eventual design comes out of this. And I personally have heard for many years now that those in our community who want to downsize, especially to a certain age they get to, and they want to downsize from their homes to an apartment of that kind. So this is which was part of our discussion with the minister regarding that as well. And of course, a big issue, as many communities are facing, as you probably know, is rental, especially those who are trying to maintain their workforce in their communities. And we have the same situation in Harrison as well. So that's, and of course, the whole complex we mentioned would encompass a recreation area and council chambers and possibly a primary care center as well. So thank you again for your report.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. Councillor Schweinmetz.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I really like the process. I was able to meet the team at the open house, and kudos to staff for getting so many people out there and communicating it to the village. I've often thought that this is a lost opportunity right in the middle of the heart of our village, and I'd like to see sort of a redo of a sort of a campus effect there. There's so much opportunity, but regardless of what we do, we're going to be giving up some parking, and this is something we need to address. And this is not a question for you necessarily, but I think internally we need to think about, there's going to be some lost parking there likely. We need to find out where we're going to replace it to. So anyways, but thank you for the presentation.
Seeing no other questions, we thank the team from Modus for the presentation, the update, and we look forward to the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple of recommendations here that committee of the whole rise and report to council, and that council adopt the report of committee of the whole.
Moved.
Moved by Councillor
Your
Fascio,
worship.
seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on that? Councillor Schweinmetz.
Yeah, sorry, just what are we adopting? Right. Are we adopting anything today, or?
No, sorry, Your Worship, anything that comes out of this meeting would be, if there was a resolution that was adopted in the committee of the whole, it wouldn't actually take effect until the next regular council meeting when those meetings, or sorry, the minutes were adopted. But there's been no resolutions to date, so we're fine. It's just all you're doing is rising and reporting, and it's just a report that you're, there's no official report, it's just your rising and reporting.
So just a question of process and procedure then, with regards to, for instance, the Fire Smart or the wildfire resiliency plan. There obviously there's some massaging to do with it. When do we do that?
My guess, my guess, I would presume that when council has to debate whether to adopt the report, at that point, when we're looking at the report, we can consider amendments to the report or how we want to adopt that report. Because I understand we need that report adopted to apply for various grant funding. So I'm hoping that could be on a fairly soon council agenda, and we can turn our minds to that with the benefit of our committee of the whole meeting today.
And would it be appropriate to do that kind of thing in a full council meeting? Should we have another council of the whole, or? I mean, there's some significant massaging to do with this plan. Massage is maybe not the word I should use. There's some more than just tinkering is what I should say.
Councillor Fascio?
From my personal perspective, I'm very happy with the plan and the presentation we've had today. If there's any subsidiary questions that could arise at the next council meeting, but I think I would expect at the next council meeting that this plan will be up for council resolution for adoption or to turn it down. Whatever the vote, whichever way the vote goes. Thank you.
Councillor Pasha?
Yeah, I'm just,
Councillor Swinbank.
I'm just trying to think through the machinations of how we're going to do this. Because I think there's a couple of things that each of us would like to see more emphasized, raised from low to high to medium, and some that maybe should even be deleted. So I just want to, and I don't know if a full-on council meeting is that time, but maybe it is. I'm not sure.
I understand that when we look at the Community Wildfire Resiliency Report and whether to adopt it, we adopt it maybe with amendments or changes, and we consider those at that time. We got to the committee of the whole meeting today as a reference when that report came to council with the recommendation to adopt it, and we referred it to committee of the whole for the discussion we had this morning. So if it goes back to council, we have that opportunity to have those discussions at that time and whether to adopt the report, and if so, how. Call a question. No further discussion. All in favor of the motion? That passes unanimously. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is questions from the public pertaining to agenda items we had today. Yes, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. My question is about the charrette. And I'm familiar with that process. My concern is that we've had an open house here and it was well attended, but a lot of people weren't really focused on such serious issues as the official community plan, the future of the village, the capacity of our community hall, and things like that. And the charrette concerns me, and I want to know why you would proceed to have the first 2 days of the charrette excluding any resident of Harrison Village in the process. All credit to staff and consultants from out of town, but we are the people who live here. You're the people who live here. Our advisory planning commission are the people who live here. And presumably, whatever conclusion you make from this design exercise of a charrette will be incorporated into our official community plan, where it is already mentioned, but only briefly. And from my perspective, I wonder why the council is not including the residents of the village in this design exercise, particularly because of the importance of the future of this community hall. I would just like to remind council that we bought that piece of land for the express purpose of building a new, bigger, better community hall to replace this memorial hall. And that seems to have got lost in the thing. The second question I would like to ask is, why did you limit the design area to that little piece of land between Miami River Drive and the next street and, you know, the public works yard, etc.? When we have done design work on that area in the past, we have included the school board and Fire Hall Park, a much bigger area. And I think that it's a mistake to limit this design exercise to that one assembly block of land, when just across the road, you have the schoolyard and the Fire Hall Park and the Fire Hall, all of which are public facilities. And planning should encompass the whole thing, come up with a traffic plan, a circulation plan. Perhaps the school board has some ideas of where the new school will be located, and all that should be considered. So I think that your scope is much too small in designing that small area. We also own an acre of land on Macomb Drive across from Chestnut that could be the new public works yard, for instance, and free up the whole area. So I really think that the design parameters that you've set need to be questioned because we need to talk about a bigger area and a longer term vision to how we accommodate the needs of 3,000 residents of Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Coming at, oh, thank you, Mr. Allen. This is midstream, so the scope of the project was set out for myself anyway, and joining it after the project had been initiated in terms of reference set. I do see a continuing theme of public engagement, starting with the open house a couple weeks ago, and with, if I understood the presenters today properly, public pin-up sessions, seeking more public input. So that's what I see today. I thank you for your comments. Hoping to get some ideas on this, and hopefully some of the things you pointed out are noted either through the public open house or be brought up at the pin-up session. Seeing no further comments from the public or questions. Oh,
Pardon me, Your Worship, and also we could go to Zoom as well after Mr. Webster.
Hello, Gary Webster, 520 McCombs Drive. I looked at these two reports and I tried to compare them, and it was good that I get some clarification today on how it was done, and there was old science and new science, because at first here I thought, when I looked at it, and I saw it going to low after 7 years, and I thought, well, geez, you'd think it would be raising, because we haven't done any type of work in there to mitigate fuel loads or what have it. And I thought, geez, we've solved climate change, and we should have brought in maybe scientists to understand what we've done here to make it low. So, but now I understand the science behind it, and there's different protocols or whatever steps they've done, because I saw, well, in 2017, they had so many other test sites where they looked at it. Now they're saying they only use 5. I'm thinking, I think they've missed a whole section of Lower Harrison in their values or their data taken, so that they could make the comparisons. So now we're low. My house and my neighbors tend to be in this wildfire development permit area because of it being high before. And now we have this great fire break called McCombs Drive, which is going to, I guess, maybe save my house from fire and my neighbor's house. So I'm thinking maybe we should pull it out of the wildfire development permit area, since it is low. Or what we should be doing is maybe putting all of Harrison in the wildfire development permit area, so that things are built to a better standard, because what we're going to have in a fire is ash flying everywhere. I'm not talking just a fire starting in East Sector over here in the west of Harrison. I'm talking about stuff coming over the top of the mountain and landing all over the village. I think everything should be built to the high standard. So I hope you leave my house in the wildfire development permit area, so that I can maybe help better the community. Thank you.
are there any questions from anyone participating remotely by Zoom this time?
Anybody on Zoom, if you have a question, please raise your hand.
Seeing none, one more question from the floor.
Okay, I actually have 2 questions. There was reading the community wildfire resilient plan. I noticed that they made reference to the evacuation route that's being proposed, and I am just concerned whether, and I didn't get a chance to ask in the discussions, I realized that. Does the community wildfire resilience plan reflect Blackwell's understanding and impacts posed by the terrain instability? These terrain instability concerns were raised in the on-site contracts that the district of Kent had. And I think one was made public, the other, which was the second one, the first one was not. So I was just wondering if you may want to check on that. The second question I have was, when was the joint Kent Harrison Seabird Island application sent to the Minister of Environment?
I can note your questions. I don't know if anyone can answer them here today, specifically. We'll note your questions and I'm not unable to answer them today. I don't have that information.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn from Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Schweinbenz. Discussion. All in favor? And we're adjourned. Thank you all.